Welcome to everybody listening now and in the future. This is a special evening that we have planned with Robin Grille. He is one of our teachers in the online school, beloved among many, and he is the creator of the Inner Child Journeys Practitioner Training. So I'm just going to read your bio quickly, Robin, even though it says you are based in Sydney, but you're no longer based in Sydney, are you?
I wish I was today.
Well, where do you live now?
Okay, we're let's say it's any towns that I'll tell you, you won't know. They're too small. Mullumbimby is our nearest town, a place called Mullumbimby. It's in a subtropical area near the ocean, north of New South Wales. You've probably heard of Byron Bay. We're half an hour from Byron Bay, and we're surrounded by forest and a lot of water, a lot of rain.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm just going to introduce you as a psychologist and a parenting educator. He's written several wonderful books. If you haven't had a chance to read them, I highly recommend them, including Parenting for a Peaceful World, which won international acclaim, and that led to speaking engagements around the world. He has a following in Asia, United States, Europe, Australia. Engaging speaker and someone who's passionate about children, the history of children, the history of childhood and present day, parenting, and how we all have our own inner child. He's created the most remarkable program called the Inner Child Journeys, which he's constantly working on and improving. So with that, I think I'll just say welcome. Robin, please continue.
Thank you, Kate. I really, really appreciate the way that you hold these things together. It just makes my work like going down a water slide, just to stay on the water metaphors. And it's lovely how you've invited all these wonderful people. It's great to see all of you, well, some of you, as many as I can fit in my computer screen. So welcome to all of you. Gosh, what a day, and what a not just a day, what a time that we're in. Let's, by way of arriving and joining together the identity of this temporary little family that we've created, let's greet the moment and ourselves with a question. Take some time with you for now, and if you'd like to have eyes closed, that's lovely. If not, that's fine too. And just come to your own comfort and your internal space in your body, and connect with what brought you here today. There's so many other things you could be doing right now. So what brought you here? What is the yearning, the curiosity that brought you here? I suspect that there's something you would like to make better. Is it for you? Is it for your world? Is it for the world? Could be one central thing, could be a number of things. Your wish or your wish list. What is it you're yearning for, longing for? We tend to do these things because secretly or out loud, we have a wish for something to change, some aspect of existence to be a little different for us, for others, perhaps. And without pushing this, because open curiosity is absolutely beautiful. Maybe you don't have any particular wish, but you're just curious, and that's really, really cool. Welcome that. If your wish feels like it has some definition, listen for what that is. Those feelings can be language sometimes. And hold that within. Honor that longing, that sense of why you are here with us. You might see that as a light inside you. You might feel it as a sensation in your body. Perhaps you see it written on a screen in your mind. Really make that special. And when you have that defined for you, your quest, your longing, let a little window be open of allowing a sense of how surrounded you are right now. That for a little while, we have formed a family, and I'm not sure how many people. And you're an element. You're an invaluable and unrepeatable part of this we, this one we. We all are. Can you feel that? All of us in our diverse parts around the world. What is it that we might emanate in our intention, our group intention, our shared longing? What might that look like? What might that be? The energies that emanate from this group to the world around us as we speak together and listen while we are together, but also the things that we might then take into our lives in a practical sense afterwards, after having joined. Just having a sense of that, the we, and what might we give? Let's have that as a dedication, and it can be your personal silent dedication of what you would most hope for in your wildest dreams, that our meeting today could gift to the council of all living beings of this earth. Does that sound too idealistic and improbable? What about if we don't care? Don't let what you think is probable limit the joyful imagination that plays inside you with and without your permission. And that is us. Thank you for sharing this meditation with me. And thank you for being here and in your own way, in your own time. Very, very, very gently allow the eyes to be open and just take sips from your environment around you until you land in the room in which you currently sit or stand, and invite the world around you to be visible and to join you. Marvelous. The doors of perception. The doors of perception. I wonder how many of you are even old enough to know about that band. Do you remember the Doors? And it tends to, yeah. I can tell straight away when you know the band well, because you're. It gets a little bit associated with the use of LSD, and I want to take it so far outside of that. And no judgment about LSD. There's some incredibly courageous experimentation still going on to this day. Very mainstream these days, but it's I love that languaging. How perception is a doorway, and that can be closed or it can be opened. And this, by the way, really relates to the topic of today, the doors of perception. It's central to what I want to be talking about today. And I'll be talking for, I don't know what, as long as Kate lets me go without reminding me that I'm losing track of time. You know, I'm going to take aim for the 45-minute mark, because the most thrilling part is when you guys unmuzzle yourselves and jump in with what is your most burning question. And that takes all of us in this wonderful new adventure. And I think that I give of my best when I'm at the receiving end of your questions. So I look forward to that bit. I want to set the stage, though, with some conceptry. Some, plant a garden of conceptry, that is stuff that I really, really love. What if? What if you haven't met yourself? What if you really don't know yourself? And you might have been around long enough and done an immense amount of personal growth and work in your own way, in your own good way, and you feel like you've familiarized yourself with every corner of your being. And what if you've barely scratched the surface of meeting who you are? And that there's a kind of a largeness. What does that do to you to consider that as a possibility? Does it take your breath away a little bit? Is it a bit scary? Is it exciting? To what degree is our self-perception frozen, baked in to a list of overestimates and underestimates? What about if that's also true about the people in our lives that we think we know so well? Some of them we know, our children, we know their every contour. We've wiped their bottoms. We've listened to them crying. Our partners, people that we've shared beds with. Incredible intimacies. What if we don't know them? What if we know regions of them? What if we know small aspects of who they are? To what degree have we settled, perhaps lazily, into some sense of finality that, oh yeah, Jack, I know Jack. I know all about Jack. We say personality. I can make predictions about Jack. Every time we do this, he does that. Jack is just like an old pair of socks. I know exactly where he fits in. He's always cranky about that, and he's always generous about this. Oh my God. What if we just don't know these people? Let's extend that further. What if we don't know situations? Particularly in a great state of incredible insecurity and fear in this time that we have named the time of pandemic. We gave it a title and we made it about that. And it feels like an angry time as well as a time of terror. On the surface, it looks like polarization that's being drawn further and further and further and further with people take camps and sides about narratives. And social media is warfare. And we talk in terms of facts. Your facts are misinformation. My facts are the facty facts. And there's reputable news sources, and then there's the fake ones. That's so neat and tidy, isn't it? And I'm not hoping to just confuse everything. You know, we need a sense of where I put my feet, there's going to be a floor. You know, that if I press this button, my kettle will boil. If, you know, we need a sense of things so we can make a bet on which direction to go with every one of our behaviors and movements. It's what we do. We make our best bet given the expectations that are the only expectations that we've learned. And then we move forward with that. And sometimes it works and sometimes we fall off the earth or hurt somebody. So I'm not trying to confuse all of these issues. And it's not about, but what if our vision of everything is so partial and limited that our arrogance is nothing more than vapor? I've said it myself when in my you know when I'm writing, you know, and particularly my first early writings where I would back myself up with science, and I could feel my finger doing this. Science says, the evidence says, and it's a very socially potent and influential lens. And when you make your voice go a little bit deeper and you quote the science, you're more credible, aren't you? And people will want to join your club. And there is something of value to that. We do have to do our best. But what if it's not that this, our way of understanding our world and the stories that we tell ourselves about our world, our people and our events, our happenings, it's not that we're lying to ourselves and it's all false, but what if our door of perception is so partial and narrow? So I'm very intrigued. I'm not thinking we're liars. I'm just intrigued by what we can't see and what we leave out. The enormities of what we leave out. And why is all of this that I'm ranting about so important? Why is our perception so central to the way that our life works and the way that we impact the lives of the poor souls that share their lives with us? The lens through which I see so governs and conditions the behaviors that will spring from me towards you. Now that's a formidable organizer, to contemplate how much the history of humanity that we keep on writing and rewriting with every passing breath, how much that is governed by the way that we see this door of perception. How much of the unnecessary, you know, the fighting that goes on. We're fighting against nature. We've been fighting to dominate nature for 10,000 years, to the point that the earth is coughing up blood now and our children are in desperate trouble. So this is serious business. Or at least I think that that's the lens through which I look. Maybe I'm missing something, like we all are, right? I think I see environmental emergency. And I live by that. What if I'm wrong though? Anyway, but the shadow boxing that we do with one another, with our people, with our family, our friends, our children, our partners, but also, in foreign policy. If that's massively or even entirely determined by the way that we perceive, then we need to start really talking about our perception and what are the rules that govern this way of seeing ourselves and the world around us. Now we could talk about many words. We can talk about projection, and you're all, I'm sure, familiar with that. And it's the early Freudians, I believe, that started to use that terminology, that we project onto each other. We see the past instead of the real other person. It's also true the things that we project about ourselves, our habitual, self-perceptions, how incredibly limiting they are. We've had those conversations. We've grappled with that concept. Beautiful new concepts that help us to understand, to have a lot more compassion. The new word is neuroception. It gives you, and I think that word was coined by Steve Porges, eminent neuropsychologist, neuropsychiatrist, and all-around good bloke. And neuroception, that word, it's not that it's a separate thing, it just emphasizes, it reminds us that if you think you're in charge and you can decide to see what you want to see, that's not compassionate about how automatic our perceptions can be. It's a little grandiose to think that we can fiddle our perceptions just like you change the programming in a computer. None of us are that invulnerable. This moment that we are greeting each other comes at the tail end of decades of incredibly potent experiences. And in our early years, those experiences were incredibly formative because of how quickly our brain is growing at that time. And so formative experiences have a phenomenal influence in the way that we see. Here's why. I recently heard a prominent science writer in a discussion about the power of placebo and nocebo. As the sum total of his research from, the enormous conversation of brain scientists around the world, that one interesting way to explain our shared human neurology is that our brain is a prediction machine. Of course, it's more than that, but just for the sake of this story, let's just look at it through that doorway, because it reveals some interesting things, how much our brain is a prediction machine and how much our billions of years of evolution have selected for that, so that we don't have time really with every stimulus in our environment to say, is that going to be a threat? Let me look that up on Google. Is that going to be friendly? Hold it a minute, freeze time. Is that snake over there? Is that one of the deadly ones? I have to go look it up on my snake app in my phone. We don't have time. Some decisions have to be done. A lot of our behaviors to step out of the way or to engage or to run or to fight or to stop and watch, or to love or to hold. Those a lot of our behaviors, if we are to survive and live well, happen without conscious permission, happen quickly. And our neurology is this incredible machinery that takes the sum total of everything we have felt since before we were born, since we had a neurology in the womb, this sum total of bazillions of experiences, and makes in a nanosecond or less a prediction based on the past. And the force of this predictive tenacity is utterly formidable. So that quite often we might end up feeling like we are at its mercy. Neuroception. We react. Sometimes there's something to be grateful for. When you're in trouble, you might be grateful that your body knew how to react very, very instantly without your permission, without sitting down to plan, without your planning mind. So there's a survival factor in this neuroception. It's good to know that because we can be kind to that aspect of ourselves. Nature works so hard to give us this. And like every faculty, there's a gift and a trap. The trap is that we live so much of our time out of these predictions that are silent and just working over time. So that it governs how we, not all, but most of how we engage with one another. This is the human condition. This is our conflicts. This is our broken intimacies, but this is also our politics. And I can talk a little bit about, I want to talk about the personal and the political. Because in our dialogue today, I want to maintain that consideration of where do we go to next as a species? And not only as a species, but an integral part of this incredibly beautiful being called the planet, the totality of life on this earth, that needs a bit of TLC right now. Now, let me pause for a moment. What do I want to say next? We have been given tools of such a diversity of tools for, first of all, apprehending our neuroceptions. The fact that I'm looking at you through a lens and making stories about you, just even before you open your mouth to speak, just the moment you walked in the room, because you remind me of a friend from primary school or a school teacher that was strict, or somebody that was lovely or whatever. It was this reminiscences that cloud our vision all the time. It happens all the time. We've been given tools for firstly apprehending the past perception, acknowledging when it becomes a problem rather than a gift, and then changing gear. We've been given a clutch in our gearbox that we can change gear in a moment, so that in bringing love and compassion to the nature and the reason for our projections, that gives us a moment of freedom where the other person or the other being or the other country, whatever it is that you are looking at, becomes a surprise to you. That even if your expectations happen to be true that day, they were too small. Okay, and this is where things to me feel potentially thrilling. Like it makes me gasp with awe. the feeling of that moment when I let myself be taken by surprise. If there were no surprises, there would be no awe. And we would be treading water. And that's what happens. That's our stuckness. We're treading water, reliving circular themes from our history. They say that we marry our mother or we marry our father. It's not that simple. You know, but we do tend to, if we don't attract people that help us to repeat some themes, we provoke them until they help us to repeat those themes anyway. And it's not that we relive our childhood exactly, but the essential themes that we were embattled with, we tend to revisit those places, the reenactment compulsion through our relationships. A lot. That happens a lot. We're perverse. When it's not happening immediately, we cause it to happen. Why? Because when I see you as somebody that I look, you know, that oh my God, you've got the thing that I don't have, so I'm completely going to cling to you. Or when I see you as a threat, somebody that will leave me and abandon me. When I see you as a threat, somebody that will judge me and wound me. When I see you as a threat, somebody that will attack me. That's my door of perception. That happens so quickly. If I don't pay attention, I won't notice it. But already my behaviors towards you, the way that I look, the way that my eyes will be shaped in your presence, the way that I breathe in your presence, my posture, the things that I will say become so heavily conditioned that you will feel a kind of a sharp energy from me, or a kind of a remote, not quite there energy from me. Either way, that might provoke some of your defensiveness, where you get triggered. And relationships then become a mutual triggering, like this, where your defenses trigger my defenses, which then trigger your defenses, which trigger mine, in an endless kind of vicious loop. That's how we co-create, mostly unconsciously until we pay attention. We co-create the most painful conflicts and abandonments. At the end, we say, see, I knew it. I knew you were going to leave me. I knew it. I knew I couldn't trust you. I knew it. That confirms my past. And it always comes to this. Whatever the old stories, women are always this. Sooner or later, men are always that. When it comes to the crunch, people always blah, 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 blah. How often do you hear that in your own mind as well as all around us, right? God, children these days, they always fill in the gap. But how much we actually co-create that with all of the reactivities that we learned as adaptations to the most painful moments in our growing up. And we're so stuck, and we're so very, very tired. We're so tired of the same thing over again. Humanity is exhausted. Individually, we're drained. Here we are again. The need to allow ourselves to be taken by surprise, where we're not controlling the outcome with our neuroception, right? To open that door of perception, the need is so great. It's so, so great. And the moment of awe and surprise at the truer beauty of another being, the magnificence of another being, and ourselves, the cosmic enormity of ourselves, beyond what we had predicted. That moment, when it opens like an eye, it doesn't stay open very long. That is so nourishing and so relieving. No wonder when you look at the wisdom traditions of every big culture around the world, at the core, when you distill down to the core, you know, you dig all through the interesting gods and all of the neuroses that religions have and paranoias and all of that projected stuff. The core is always about how much of our life is illusory, how stuck we are in a repeating theme or sets of themes, wheel of life, whatever you want to call it. Wheel of life is not just one 80-year lifespan. There are little wheels turning every day of repetition. But there is a possibility of suspending our projections and allowing ourselves with the next inhalation to be really surprised. Wow, I didn't know that's who you were. I still don't, but I've just seen something so much larger about you that I had never seen before. And about me. And about me. And I think that changes everything. Changes everything. Literally changes everything. By seeing it differently, by letting our eyes see rather than projecting, changes everything, changes how everything works. Changes how everything works. And we see enemies. We need to learn to see the heart inside the enemy and how much we are like them. How much we are like them. I love the exercise of picking the people, the people I fear, the figureheads I fear and despise, and doing an exercise where I see how much of them I have in me. And then when I understand that part of me, the psychopathic part of me, the narcissistic part of me, etc., when I understand where that comes from, then the compassion that comes is shared. You know, this doesn't mean not being careful when there's somebody who's violent or something. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean not having interpersonal boundaries. It means that when we avoid somebody because they're dangerous, doesn't mean we condemn their soul. We can still say no to behaviors and be very firm about it, while at the same time recognizing that that's also me, that person. I'm a bit like that when I'm in despair. Perhaps I'm a lot like that when I'm in despair. That's my family, that person that I seem to hate. It's my family. It's another me. Just quickly, I want to say that there's a tendency to be critical in the new age about projection and judgment. There's always somebody saying, stop judging, it's bad to judge, and then we judge ourselves for judging, and the wheel goes round and round in the same old way. With my inner child journeys work that I do, one of the things that I love about it is that we take those judgments and instead of saying, try not to judge, try, effort, push, try to see beyond that, which is sort of like swimming against the river. Get interested in those judgments in the way of they are the smoke that tells you where the fire is. What's of immense value about your judgments is that they show you where you're hurt. They show you what you're a veteran of. Be interested in your judgments. I think that person is selfish. That person is a narcissist. That person is greedy, etc., etc., etc. And the beautiful thing happens when we look at, why am I preoccupied with that? What about my own greed, and where does that come from? So the judgment, perception, neuroception, the brain making predictions. It's the voice of your inner child crying out that will never stop crying out until he or she, they are really, really heard and valued. They're a substance. They're a specific substance. I don't want to get too technical right now, but this is what my inner child work is about. This is why I do these trainings through Kate. And this is why I wrote the book, that there are really simple steps, like steps in a dance, that we begin with our judgment, whatever you want to call it, perception, neuroception. We begin with our projection, okay? And get interested. What's the feeling under that? When did I first start to feel this way? And then not just feeling our pain and our wound, which does tend to bring forth cascades of self-compassion, but what is my need? What does my inner child need? So I don't invite people to feel their pain for its own sake. It's underneath it, there's a need. And then where this becomes really dynamic is that I can have that need met in an adult appropriate fashion. I can, actually, if I'm creative enough. When I've said yes to my need, even just the validation, when I've said yes to that need, and of course I need this, of course my inner child, if you want to use those terms, needs this. And no wonder, given that that's what I lived through as a child or adolescent or baby, no wonder I still get reactive. That's a moment of great release. And in nourishing ourselves that way, with a commitment to feeding the inner child, magic takes place. And this is what I believe magic actually is. It's just a belief, by the way. So it's not a declaration, it's my personal belief. What magic is, and why magic changes the nature of reality, is that when I give what is needed, which is a developmental need, when I feed myself well, that inner child stops screaming, crying for a moment. The magic is that my vision gets recalibrated. There's some mysterious magic in that I utterly don't understand. I just know that it happens every time. Once I've validated this pain and this longing inside me, and I look at you again, something has changed. And I think you changed, and you didn't, but my lens changed. My doors of perception creaked open. The door opened. It's a little bit ajar. I see the new. I get surprised. It feels as if I've changed the world, or the world is different. Inescapably, the way that I behave towards you gets alchemized. I got a new sets of responses to you, given that you are different to what I thought you were. Can you then extrapolate that to all of humanity? What kind of society would we then produce were we to live from the assumption that we need to keep listening to what runs our projections? And then the more that we do that, we multiply those moments of open door, liberated vision, where I see more of the beauty that is in you, the magnificence. Even on the day that I need to say, I don't want to live with you anymore, but I can still just wow, be in a state of wow about you. That's the result. If I tried to produce that result, it fails me because I'm trying. If I feed my inner child, when I look at you again, you're different than what you were 5 minutes ago. That just feels magic to me. That is the staff of Gandalf or something, you know, it's just, I love that. It's like being walloped by a surprise. And my God, that makes life so worth living. Surprises. Being vulnerable to being surprised. And it happens when we feed that inner child. Real quick, I want to say projections aren't just negative. Our positive projections are equally problematic. And I'll give you some examples. Addiction. It's all about positive projection. Gambling. It's all about positive projection. I'm going to get some love from this poker machine. Some release, some liberation, some empowerment. Addictions to substances, addictions to people, addictions to screens. It's all about positive projection. Thinking the goodies are here. Positive projection isn't a lie. It's just ignoring the rest of a lot more of the reality, narrowing our lens to the shiny bit. So the hinges on our door of perception are rusted over, okay? Here's another example of positive projection that lands us in great trouble. That abusive relationship that we don't leave, that we keep on going back to or creating a new one along the same lines, because we tell ourselves, I can see the good in the person. Well, lovely, but you're getting beat up. That person isn't ready right now in their growth for you to donate your body to the cause. Here's another example of positive projection. The guru syndrome, the savior syndrome. It creates every kind of disaster politically. You know, instead of listening to how deep is our longing to be held, how abandoned we were as babies, to really have a conversation with that pain and the longing. What we do is that we very blindly search for when's a good mom or a good dad going to turn up. A strong leader that will stop me from feeling chaotic and insecure. It's a negative projection against ourselves because we think that we're powerless. We fail to recognize ourselves so badly. And it's a positive projection about the guru or the savior or the political hero, the hero worship, the hero principle, in the belief that that person will make it okay. You know, that's when we fall in the trap of the strong leader, that 99% of the time, the strong leader will have their hand in our wallet, or worse, much worse than that. And even when it's a nice, strong leader, if you're really, really lucky, there's that positive projection of admiration implies the negative projection that I'm the little guy that needs this because I don't feel my own agency. So positive projections are just as much of a problem as the judgmental negative ones. It's still an absence of surprise. Even if I think what a nice person you are, it's such a small, that aperture of what a nice person you are is still so small. It's lovely, but it's still so small. I want to say a couple of words about this time that we've narrowly, collectively, in the collective trance that we've all been swept away. Well, most of us to some degree swept away by. We've named it the pandemic as if that's what's going on and that's what defines. You know, it's not that I believe there's nothing to really be careful with and to respond to, but we've defined it this way. And the polarization that was already there just got multiplied and became more and more and more stretched out. And this is fake news. That's the scientific true stuff. That's my gosh, the fantasies that arise in both poles. Like, these are the people that will save us. These are the things that will save us completely, so there'll be no problems left. And or these people over here, they're trying to reduce the population by poisoning everybody. Or, you know, I don't think, in my short time on this little earth, I don't think I've ever heard so much expression of the deepest fears and pains and abuses and abandonments of our inner children projected onto the world stage simultaneously by everyone at the same time. I've never seen it so much. Where we get entrapped in the craziness and we buy in is that we forget to ask the question. When you declare that these are our saviors and these people will help us and heal us, or these people are trying to kill us, and you know, this is the poison, and or, you know, there's everyone in government is a pedophile, or just all the both the positive investment and the most paranoid fantasies and the kind of the non sequiturs that all implies. You know, we forget to ask the questions, what is this saying about what you've lived as a child? And often it's a collective shared fantasy that we are subjected to because of shared experience, shared neglects, shared abandonments, shared abuses, which is, for most of us, most people, we're survivors of some very, 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 very scary stuff in our childhoods. And our ancestry is entirely that. If you take a little glimpse at history and anthropology, it's incredible what humanity has gone through, and we still subject each other to it. I mean, there's so much wounding, inner child wounding, that no wonder we see our childhoods projected outward symbolically. And that sets us up for fighting, or escaping, or freezing. That dictates our politics, our political lens. Oh my God. What that then cycles back to is that if you want to be a social activist and you're a political being that you like to really think and engage on that kind of arena, it's not that this is the only thing to do, but oh my God, it's a really important, fundamental, I think, organ, an essential organ of social change activism, to learn to speak the language of, you know, what we're all seeing is so heavily biographical. And the enemies that I thought I had, they're me. My vision of them as enemies is so biographical. Everywhere I look, I see my angry dad, my devouring mom, my brutal school teachers, the bullies in the playground that terrified me and humiliated me. I see all of those people painted all over the faces of all the political figures that I deal with and all of the people down my street. And the flip side of that is when I feed those, you know, take care of those wounded places that occasionally cry out, or occasionally just go, it allows the surprise. And now I can engage with the people I used to call my enemies and love them. Doesn't matter I got to agree on every point. This is not about agreement. It's got nothing to do with agreeing. But there's this magic that happens when we understand each other at the gut level, emotionally. I'm only going to say two more things. And I want to hear from you guys. One thing is, I loved learning when I was a younger psychologist, and I did all these trainings about conflict resolution, and I used to go into workplaces, into boardrooms, and there'd be the unions on one side and the executive on the other side, all hating each other and stuff like that. And my training was, as a facilitator in a conflict situation, is to tell everyone this is going to be a solutions-free zone. We're not seeking agreement, and we're certainly not going to think about any solutions. Okay, so that's forbidden. The first thing we're going to do is we're all going to say how we feel. And nobody leaves this room until the people that you think are on the other side, you get that they get how you feel. And it's going to go in both directions. No one counts less than someone else. So the emotional connection first. And when that happened, that's when magic happens. And you're still looking at the people from the opposite team on the other side of the table, but then you understand them. That is devastating. You find yourself caring about the person you've been fighting. It undoes all of the things you were ready to do. You want to make matters even more confronting. That person that you wanted to strangle is now showing you that they really get how you feel and why you feel frustrated or frightened or hurt. Revolution. When we get to that, then and only then we say, let's brainstorm some solutions. Suddenly these enemies are helping each other to have, and they're creating solutions you could not have imagined in your wildest dreams, because the connection happens, the solutions will follow. Inventive stuff that comes out from left field. So there's nothing that this doesn't apply to. Politics, foreign policy, environmental policy, family policy, neighborhood stuff, family, parenting, lovemaking, friends. There's nothing that doesn't apply to. And the last thing I wanted to say, how much all of this is, I think I'm starting to understand what forgiveness is when people talk about forgiveness. And you read these ancient texts and there's always somebody urging you to forgive yourself and forgive others. And that's always really irritated me, actually. You know, to try to conjure up a sense of forgiveness just feels so pious, and it feels like it's painting over the feelings that are bursting inside of me, you know. And I'd never suggest to somebody, go and forgive the person that abused you. I mean, what a nasty suggestion that is. However, what I discovered in doing this kind of work, both for me and in my working with people, there's a moment that a voice inside me says, no wonder. And it hits me like a ton of bricks, but in a good way. So that's a bad metaphor. It hits me like a shaft of light or something. That I can look at you and see a dangerous individual or a really repulsive individual. And I no longer am afraid of that, because I know that all of those perceptions are subject to transformation. It's like, don't worry about the fact that it's raining, because the sun comes out. That's just the way that it works. That when I hear your story that you've lived, and not just the data, the information of the story, but how it felt to be you. Suddenly there's a moment where a voice inside me says, no wonder. No wonder you do that. No wonder you're like this. No wonder you're whatever you like. No wonder you're greedy. No wonder narcissistic, no wonder you're selfish, no wonder you're violent, no wonder all kinds of stuff, whatever it is. No wonder you're hopeless, no wonder you're lazy. Whatever it is that I've put on you, when I hear your story, it just, compassion follows from that. I love that process. The no wonder. I gave it a name, the no wonder experience. We can point that at ourselves as well. All of the things that disappoint you about you. Please learn the story behind that. How did that begin for you? The origin story. And suddenly you'll be feeling like, oh, no wonder I'd keep doing this my whole life. Okay, I still don't like that I do that. However, oh my God, that context. It's impossible to condemn myself. It's impossible not to love that person that is me, who is stuck in some defensive behaviors that often land me in trouble. No wonder. So I think that's the anatomy of forgiveness. No wonder. And we still need boundaries. So for me, the inner child journeys work as a personal growth thing, as well as an interpersonal or intracommunal healing orientation, is as personal as it is political in its possibility. That's not an obligation, of course, but in the possibility that this offers, in learning how to have a clutch in our hands again, where we can change gear whenever we really discover the need to open the door of perception and allow ourselves to be taken by surprise. We can do that. And part of that equation is by listening to the inner child in here that is producing those projections that close the door. I hope that's all made sense. I hope that's all made sense. I hope that's stirred you up as well. And I'd love to hear from you, because some of you will have comments and questions, and I don't even know what time it is. There we go.
It's past the hour, Reverend, and I'm sure that people will love to stick around for a few questions. I know we've gone over past the hour, but we said we would, but it's worth it. So I would love to also hear any questions or anything that you would like, and just open your microphone and I'll bring you up on screen to talk.
Am I projecting woefully when I think I remember we had an hour and a half in totality? Did I get that wrong?
That's great. Okay, good.
Is that what you guys were expecting? Were you expecting an hour or an hour and a half?
I think you said an hour and a half, Robin. You're right.
I think it was, yeah. I went by that assumption anyway. Let's go for it. Let's go for an hour and a half.
Yes.
I hope you can all stay. And
plenty of time for questions. And so please just open your microphone and I'll bring you up on the screen with Robin if you wish. Or raise your hand. Okay. Angela.
I'll go. Yeah, thanks. So my video is not on so that I can be heard better. Good Lord, Robin. Oh, thank you so much for coming through the rain and sweeping us all down the hill with the waters along with you. What I'm reflecting on right now is that a lot of times when we have discussion and the political comes up and we're talking about somatic awareness or whatever the issue might be, and not with Kate, I'm talking about wider circles that I've been in. It seems like, for me in my experience, that there has been sort of just one lens that everybody's comfortable with, and it's usually whatever is dominant in the dominant culture of the room. And it's usually a model that's acceptable by most. but there's so many crossroads, and there are so many layers and levels that it's not always a good fit for everybody. And it's not always an honest conversation if we just keep it to one lens. So what you've said about magic and wonder and creation speaks to the heart of me as a person of color who comes, you know, from mixed ancestry, both indigenous and Spanish colonial. And I just want to thank you, because I feel such a relief in my body, but also in my imagination, that I'm actually allowed to be present and see with this wide a scope, and sort of feel kind of not so crazy, that we're all, some of us, actually thinking in these ways. So I just wanted to thank you, and then and say that to you so that you can hear how important I feel in my bones and my waters, that having this level of this discussion, you know, how important it is. And I think if I have a question, if there is one, is really about the political. And I don't, you know, in Mayan there's a saying, Idlakesh, you said it means you are the other me. In Mayan Quiche, it's not my ancestry, but I know that. And in the political, it seems right now that we're all most adversely held in a grip. And I was just wondering if you could say more about how you think we can support others and ourselves to live this moment and come out the other side with some sense of community and respect for one another. I know you already addressed it, but I don't know if there's might be a bit more you'd like to say about it.
I'm really glad that you've asked me to address it again, because I don't think this can ever be addressed often enough. And am I hearing from, are you Angela?
Yes, I'm Angela.
Angela.
Sí, muy bien.
Wow. Thank you so much for everything that you said, Angela. And it's not that I can hear you, I can really feel your presence in every, the song that you just sang. Thank you. You were talking at one moment about the profusion of cross currents leading to, you know, where do I find a direction? Which way do we swim? And it triggered me into remembering a man that I very recently had some dealings with, he brought an incredibly obsessive, desperate obsessive energy to his beliefs about, you know, that the things that are going on right now are all complete lies and hoaxes. We're being manipulated. We're getting killed by, you know, the worst edges of the conspiracy belief. And I felt really an enormous difficulty in how do I deal with this guy, because I just find him utterly overwhelming. And I don't feel like I can, and it was important to deal with him because he was doing a major amount of work in our land. He was a builder. And my tendency is to, when I see something I disagree with, is to begin by arguing a different point. You know, I feel like my lifetime of training is cerebral. It's about arguing a point, about beginning by saying, well, I don't agree with that part of it, and I see things differently this way. You know, that it's such an incredibly powerful habit inside me to begin in the argument module, in a way. And it's not that I, you know, maybe everything that this guy in his paranoid fantasy, maybe it's all true. I mean, I've read a lot of history. Worse things have happened in history, you know. So it's equally the positive projections that this would not happen in our time. That's equally a projection. So, you know, I didn't have a thing of substance to say. I just felt really overwhelmed. Also really worried for him because his life became and his profession became increasingly dysfunctional in the way that his preoccupation just kind of consumed him and made him ill. And in the end, all his employees walked away from him, and he's lost, and but in an incredibly freaked out place, joining with other freaked out people in a freaked out part of the protests that isn't really working for them. And so I looked at all of my usual instant responses, and the one that comes a little bit later, I'm trying to get better at it, is how much he would be talking about government and corporation and pharma and whatever it is. My God, I could hear his childhood. I just had such a body sense that this guy is being so abused, so very, very abused. I could see it in so much of him, his posture, his way, his shyness, his way of standing, and the quality of his voice. It's like he'd been beaten all his life as a child. And that's the wake-up moment for me of whatever the story that he's telling about the out there, government, corporation, whatever the receptacle is. It's biography. It might be partly true about out there, but it's loaded with biography. And that's the only moment where I started to realize he's telling me about what happened to him. He doesn't know it, but he's telling me. I've been violated a lot, manipulated a lot, and crushed a lot by these people. That's what we do. What we're unwilling to recognize as what happened to us, we project it onto the world stage incessantly up until we come to terms with our story. Now, I didn't have any permission to say that to him. What I did have permission is to not do my usual habit, which is to argue the point or whatever, to try to manage the situation. We all have this, a lot of us have this kind of a manager, you know, but to be with him, it misses the point sometimes to speak on those terms politically when what's happening is inner child wanting to be seen. And I noticed how much more sunny he would become, how much easier the conversation became, how much warmer and less afraid he would become when I brought the conversation more to our personal lives, you know, and that wasn't easy to do because it's not like he was coming to me for therapy. He was my builder. So I just want to check. It's raining loudly on my roof. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
Good.
we can hear you.
Good. We're, to some degree, I know we have to have the political discussions and debates, we always will, but to some degree we're wasting time by remaining there on that platform when really what's going on is I'm terrified, horrible things have happened to me, will someone please just listen to me? And even if we don't know that that's what we're saying, often it's what we're saying. And when we come to that and address that at the personal level, the political engagement changes tone. It changes tone. You know, maybe you still vote conservative or still vote liberal or whatever your story is, but we listen more. we're less polarized. Things soften. Remember feed the inner child. There's a magic that happens. Perception just gets altered profoundly. And then we'll leave talk about opinions till last in that style of engagement, right? Angela, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interfered. Thank you. I just will say that what I hear you saying as well is that in the broader picture, we are broadening our notions of family. And I appreciate what thank you so much. Lots to think about.
Gracias, Angelita, gracias, Ángela, por tu pregunta que me sirvió a mí muchísimo y que lo que me causas a mí es una manera de pensar mucho más profunda. Así que te agradezco.
Nada. Gracias, gracias.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for Robin? Any questions about the inner child journey or anything? Susanna.
Hello, I've been listening to this with much interest. I'm just doing a lot of trauma work with my twin sister on pre-verbal trauma and stuff, and making so many connections with in my life now as how our perceptions are so ruled by our previous experience. And it's amazing how if you come from a different kind of a different attitude, like you were saying, when you're able to finally see that person through a compassionate lens, everything changes. But you can't see them that way unless you've had some kind of opening in yourself, I think. And I was trying to explain to someone at work who was totally distraught because her 17-year-old son was now having his first relationship with a girl who refused to use birth control, and she's just freaking out and doesn't know how to talk to them, and she's bad-mouthing this girl that has much more experience, and how can she treat my son like this, and don't they know how to be responsible? And I finally kind of intimated to her that, well, from what I've been taught, it sounds like she might have had some type of trauma in her life, and she really doesn't have the capacity to think clearly, maybe. And so she's not making good decisions right now for herself or for anybody. She's just kind of saying, well, I don't want to put chemicals in my body. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to put chemicals in your body, but there is something wrong with creating a life that you're not ready to create. So, but I was just explaining to my friend, that to come from it from a different direction. And she finally she said, you know what? I don't hate this girl anymore. I kind of more look at her as like a harmed, a harmed bird, an injured bird, and that I have to take care of her now. I have to be compassionate. And I said, yes. And there, that's where compassion comes in. Is that you can now see her differently and treat her differently, treat yourself differently, treat your son differently with a different lens. And it's so just all this stuff is just so amazing to me. Thank you for this. It's just been a truly amazing talk that you've just given us. Thank you so much.
Susanna, the building on what you've been talking about, and thank you for sharing all of that. You see, I find a lot of the time I can't conjure up that compassionate new vision just by deciding to. I'm not good at that. And I wonder, you know, maybe some people are. I can't do it. You know, and I find myself wishing, I wish I could see you differently, you know, just by wishing it to be so, it doesn't happen for me. But this is why I'm so happy to have found steps that work for me, insofar as, for example, story. If I'm having trouble viewing you with compassion and understanding, I mean, this happened with me yesterday, a counseling session I was doing online with a new client. I find him incredibly difficult to like. And I won't go into why, you know, but the things that get triggered for me, I quickly started to just deeply regret that I accepted him as my client. And it's a hard thing to say, but it's true. And I'd love to pretend I'm just this good guy that sees everyone through the lens of love, and I'm not even close to that. But why that doesn't worry me so much these days is that I know how to ask for where somebody lives. And I'm so interested in that place that, and I know that people genuinely love to come to that. And story works, it weaves a magic on me. That once I get the critical aspects of a person's story that are relevant to our conversation, and I can see the emotion, I can hear it in their throat and see the eyes change, I get so touched. And here comes the no wonder experience. Everything falls into place. No wonder you act like that. No wonder you're so this and that. You know, I had you locked into that narrow vision. Now that I get what it is that you're crying out for inside, and where you're hurt, where you're vulnerable, that's a magical moment. No wonder. And then the compassion is sort of like, it hits me from behind. I'm not trying to conjure it up. So I feel incredibly comforted by that notion that when I'm short of on compassion, I know how to put myself in the position where my body will produce compassion very, very naturally. We all have plenty of it. You know, see the story, and it's the story is something that helps incredibly. Your curiosity helps incredibly. I might think you're a horrible person, but if I'm curious about where you've come from, that opens this door. Sooner or later, I'm going to be saying, no wonder, and then I'm moved. It's funny too, like when we perceive each other differently, other people start behaving differently right before our eyes. They start to show us parts of themselves that we thought didn't exist. So it's a very mutual thing. It works like a dance. The other person is dancing with you as well. So my sense of working with young people and their own adolescent or 20-something children is, I think there's something essential about really coming to terms with how helpless we feel and how helpless we are. We're desperate to try to influence, please take some kind of contraceptive or whatever it might be. Because now you're playing a big person's game and big things can happen, and it's utterly terrifying for the elders. We fear their death or their unwanted pregnancies. And that's terror. That comes and grips us in the night like a cold hand at the throat, takes our breath away. We refuse to accept how helpless we are. That's when we start to push. That's when we start to should. And and then nothing happens. We create our own block that way. But when we accept our helplessness, and that sometimes we try to influence and we realize that wrong thing that they were doing turned out to be the best thing for them. It's just that I, as the elder, I couldn't see it. So that happens too.
Yeah, the first thing I told her is that she just really needed to back off on telling them what to do. She'd given them all the information they needed, and she just needed to back off and let them make the decision, but be there if they had questions.
You know,
but
like,
I always struggle. I struggle too with like Trump. I struggle with ever being compassionate towards Trump, even though I know he suffered also as a child. He was traumatized, but he just makes me so pissed off that it's very hard for me to feel compassion towards him. So I totally am in the same boat with you with certain people.
You know, Susanna, I mean, if I see Donald walking towards me, I may do something horrible. However, he's a great that's why he's wonderful. Wonderful in terms of forcing us to do the work. There's some wonderful exercises to do around this perfect kind of figurehead that we have elaborated, that we're all clinging to. We've made him so important, and wonderful exercise. Spend 2 minutes really imagining Donald as a baby and as a little boy, not how you would like it to be, but how it was for him. Take whatever you know about his childhood, put yourself in the hands of his father and mother as a kind of an inhabitory exercise. Then just watch what happens. Watch what happens. That's one exercise. Another exercise is what are the parts inside you, inside me, that most closely resemble Donald with alarming accuracy? Which are the parts of me that are exactly, you know, in Lakesh, I think, Angela, you mentioned in Lakesh. Was that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, one of my favorite bands from England, incredible music called never mind, I'm digressing. The parts of me that are Donald Trump, the parts of me that everything I say, I'm trying to make it sound like it's for your own good. It isn't. I'm even hiding from myself how self-serving I am in my transaction. That's the Donald Trump that I am. And, you know, the problem is that if I hate Donald, that's exactly the same flavor with which I hate that part of me. I didn't mind hating Donald. I had lots of friends that hated Donald. We had a club. And then, oh my goodness, that's how I'm treating that part of me. Like severely punishing a misbehaving child.
That is so true.
Yeah.
And it's so scary to think that, you know, oh my God, I have to go there, you know, because it's utter disgust. And then I go, like you said, well, then I must be disgusted with myself, which I am on a lot of levels. So it's just a wake-up call.
Well, you're my sister and I'm your brother in everything that you just said right there. So it's unbelievably uncomfortable to then turn that lens inward for the reasons that you said. And it's scary for a moment. And the thing that we should be really terrified of is not doing that, because the results are utterly catastrophic and have been catastrophic all along. It's so lovely to have an enemy. It's so reassuring and it makes us feel so good about ourselves superficially. We don't want to let that go. But in that is every war, the world war that never stops. and we're helping to fight it. And
Yeah, you can't
make
choose the people you want to be compassionate to. You know, you can't have the bad guys and the good guys. You can't have it both ways, right?
It's easy to be compassionate to the bad guys, but then you're not, you know, it's like never doing any exercise. You become floppy. So, but I think important to remember too, the next part is, okay, I don't like that part of me that's manipulative and makes promises seductively and, you know, and controls that way. I don't like that part of me behaviorally, but don't stop there. Don't stop there. Keep going deeper. And what is that a defense of? What am I protecting myself from? What is that an attempt to, you know, that behavior comes from a deep feeling. It comes from an origin story, from a wound. And then what is the real healthy developmental nutrient instead of the bullshit stuff that I do? What would really feed that place? And if I can give that to me, next time I look at Donald Trump, he's my brother, stuck in a god-awful place. And to change the world, I need to go look after him, at least in my own mind. Goodness gracious. You know, I mean, that starts to sound like, you know, the New Testament or something, but hey, maybe they had a point. I'm an atheist and I'm not religious. Maybe those dudes had a point. Love thy enemy. Well, that's, you know, because the enemy is me, you know, and how love my enemy? I can't just sit there loving my enemy. But when you realize that there's a screaming child in there that has a genuine need, and you don't just give love, that's too vague. The needs are specific. I remember I used to hate George W. Bush and the Gulf War. And I thought the good thing, at least about George W. Bush, is it can never get worse than this. We've hit rock bottom, right? And now I miss him, you know. But so I got hated on that guy. And what a cowboy and all of that stuff. Okay. I had a dream about him one night. I had this dream that he was about 12 years old and he was dressed up literally in a cowboy suit that you'd buy at a novelty store. And he was kind of bouncing from side to side. He was looking right at me. He just really wanted to be seen, and he was shooting his little toy guns. It was like, Daddy, look at me. And he was utterly gorgeous. A beautiful little boy wanting to be acknowledged wanting to be given recognition. He completely broke through all my barriers. And, you know, when you see little toddlers showing off, you don't call them a show off. It kind of, hopefully, it moves you. You know, they say, hey, Daddy, Mommy, look at me. I can jump so high. And you just want to say, yeah, you can jump so high. Does that feel great? It looks like you feel great right now, don't you? You want to celebrate their power with them. And they drink from that. And after a while, they don't need to show off so much anymore because they've had what they needed from showing off. And I swear to God, after I had that dream, I woke up and it ruined my hatred that I was enjoying so much. And I still can't, every time I see him, I still feel really, really fond of him. I can't, you know, and he was the guy that pushed the button to start this war, but he wasn't alone in that. Millions of people kind of contributed to that disaster once you understand it. He was just the guy that was wearing the hat on the day. But the staggering thing is that it troubles me how much I can't conjure up the hatred anymore since I saw him as a little boy. And I love that because it just means that I don't have to work hard at compassion. It doesn't work to work hard. It doesn't work. See the child, see the story, and the compassion just floods you. It hits you from behind. And that's politics. That's politics. The enemy-free zone. That's politics.
Okay.
So
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you, Robin. We are now at 39 minutes past the hour. Do you want to keep going, or is this a good?
I think at this point we should I should do what I'm trying to learn to do, which is to respect time limitations of all beings, including myself and you, and to say that we pretty soon, if you haven't said so already, we are doing another training, online training on the inner child process, the inner child journey for practitioners. It'll be like this 8th one or 7th one or something that we've done, or 10th, I can't remember. And you're warmly invited. And it starts when, on March the something? March?
It starts March 28th, and it's good for 6 sessions, so six weeks.
Yeah.
And you'll learn how to take people through finding their inner child need, and how they can really find adult appropriate ways to meet those needs. So we hope to see you there, and send out the information to anyone.
Please visit Kate's website so you can read a little bit about the course and what it involves. And if you think you're even slightly interested, give it a look. I love doing this course. Other than that, we've got things on YouTube about it, and there's my book as well, Inner Child Journeys, that you can buy that online at the usual book distributors online, and you play with that. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everyone, and we'll see you. We'll see you when we do. And thanks for being a part of Pre-Imperative Healing Online. And please turn on your microphone as you head out the door and say goodbye. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.